Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Ernest Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our video. Things have been very quiet on the transfer portal front in college basketball the past few days. There really hasn't been any major commitments that have been made, but there are still some good players out there in the portal, including Chaz Lanier, Arthur Kaluma, Coleman Hawkins, to name a few, and we'll have to see where those guys end up. But another player that was quietly still on the board that is actually a really solid player has just committed to the North Carolina Tar Heels, and he fills a massive need that the Tar Heels had in the front court. Ven-Allen Lubin, the former Vanderbilt transfer portal forward, has committed to the North Carolina Tar Heels. I'm going to go over whether I believe he is a good fit for what North Carolina needs and whether him, along with the rest of the players that North Carolina has, will be enough for them to possibly be the best team in the ACC and a top 10 team in college basketball next season. Now, a lot of rankings already have North Carolina as a top 10 team for next season, but a lot of people have been saying that North Carolina's weakness is still in the front court, that they did not have enough front court depth after Armando Bacot is no longer with the program. He is a massive loss. He's out of eligibility, and it is so tough to replace a program great like Armando Bacot that had been with the program for his whole career and put up some of the best statistical numbers of any Tar Heel player in their entire program's storied history. And even though North Carolina has a little bit of a weakness in the front court, the rest of the team is looking really good for next season. The backcourt, you've got RJ Davis back, you got Seth Trimble coming back, and then you've got some talented freshmen coming into the program as well. That should help make North Carolina one of the best teams in college basketball next season. But if North Carolina did not get a good player in the front court, then the Tar Heels were going to end up being just short of having an elite roster next season. But a big shoe has been filled because finally the North Carolina Tar Heels filled that front court spot after a lot of swings and misses. Joe Tipton tweeted out that Vanderbilt transfer portal forward Ven-Allen Lubin has committed to North Carolina. The 6'8" sophomore averaged 12 points and 6 rebounds per game this past season. And a lot of people are probably wondering who Ven-Allen Lubin is, because I don't talk about Vanderbilt very much. I don't know about you, but a lot of people just seem to forget about Vanderbilt other than when it comes to baseball and academics, because Vanderbilt basketball and football just usually isn't all that good. Vanderbilt does have a new coach, and they have also brought in A.J. Hoggard from Michigan State. They paid him a lot of NIL money, so we'll have to see if Vanderbilt actually ends up being a little bit better next season, but it wasn't enough to convince Ven-Allen Lubin to stay. And he's a guy that has already transferred twice, because in his first season in college basketball, he played at Notre Dame, and he averaged around 6 points per game. And then he ended up transferring to Vanderbilt, and he averaged 12 points per game. But what's more important about Ven-Allen Lubin's sophomore season at Vanderbilt is that even though he only averaged 12 points per game, he actually improved on that down the stretch. In the final half of the season with the Commodores, he was averaging around 16 points per game. So his trajectory is going north. And even though a lot of people don't know who he is, he was actually one of the better ranked power forwards in the transfer portal this offseason. I think he was ranked the 17th best transfer portal forward by 247 Sports. And he was one of the best players still available. And there's not a lot of great players left outside of the few guys that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. The transfer portal is getting very thin with great players remaining, and North Carolina needed a front court big, and they got their guy in Ven-Allen Lubin. And he's still a guy with tons of potential, and he actually was starting to step out, shoot threes a little bit, which I think he is going to have to do at North Carolina, and possibly if he ever becomes a pro one day in the NBA, he's going to have to be able to shoot threes, because he's only 6'8", which is a little bit problematic for North Carolina, since they are having to replace Armando Bacot and all that he provided last season. With Ven-Allen Lubin only being 6'8", it's going to be tough for him to be like the true center for North Carolina next season. Maybe the Tar Heels still have to go out there and get another big. They are looking at Coleman Hawkins, who's still out there. Maybe North Carolina, if they can land him, they might end up having a top 3 roster next season in college basketball. But can't get ahead of ourselves. Still a good addition for North Carolina, because Ven-Allen Lubin's a pretty good free throw shooter at 6'8", shooting over 70% at the line. He can knock down threes a little bit, something that he will probably continue to improve at throughout his college career. And he's a pretty solid rebounder, averaging 6 boards a game. You would like that number to be a little bit higher next season at North Carolina, especially if North Carolina can't land another impact front court player in the portal. But still, as is, he's a pretty solid rebounder. Because when you look at the fact that North Carolina only has Jalen Withers and Jalen Washington on the roster for next season as guys in the front court, that definitely wasn't going to be enough for the Tar Heels. I know that people were projecting them as a top 10 team, but it's really hard to say that North Carolina would have been a top 10 team team if they didn't land any front court player, which a lot of people probably were assuming that the Tar Heels were easily going to be able to land a guy. But it took some time. With Armando Bacot gone and Harrison Ingram as well, you would have felt like North Carolina could have easily landed a big. And the Tar Heels swung and missed with Umar Ballo, Clifford Omarui, and Jonas Adu in the past few weeks. I thought that North Carolina was going to land Umar Ballo, but he ended up going to Indiana. And then Jonas Adu, he's a guy that ended up going to the Arkansas Razorbacks. So North Carolina, they tried their best. Even Clifford Omarui went to Alabama, which was tough because North Carolina lost to Alabama in the Sweet 16 this past season. And then they lost out on a massive portal guy to the Crimson Tide as well. But all three of those guys, I feel like North Carolina could have used. And I do feel that even though Ven-Allen Lubin is coming into the program, North Carolina has to land some other type of front court big if the Tar Heels are going to end up being one of the best teams in college basketball next season. They're going to be a great team next year because I'm going to get to the backcourt real quick in a minute. They got some really good players back there, but the front court is thin because Jalen Washington, even though he has talent and potential, it's very tough to throw a guy into the fire like that really hasn't been asked to do that much in his career until now. For him to go out there and now suddenly play 30 minutes per game and give you double-digit points, maybe he can, but we don't know if he can do that. And Jalen Withers, he's just not that type of guy. He's more of a bench player. He's going to play minutes next season for the Tar Heels, but he's just not a starting level player on an elite team. And like I said, losing Armando Bacot, it is tough to replace a guy like that. But if North Carolina had been able to land a guy like Umar Ballo, they would have at least been able to come close, but they just couldn't get it done. Coleman Hawkins would be a great addition, but we just don't know if he's going to stay in the NBA draft or end up transferring to another program. But we'll have to keep monitoring that. And if North Carolina can land him, oh boy, it's going to look fantastic for the Tar Heels next season. But they got a great recruiting class. They have the 6th best ranked class in college basketball this season, and the number 10 ranked high school recruiting class and the number 46 ranked transfer portal class. North Carolina under Hubert Davis has done a really good job recruiting the high school ranks, but North Carolina has also struggled for these guys to end up developing and having a lot of success. Guys like DeMarco Dunn or Tyler Nickel that ended up transferring out of the program, those guys never developed. And Seth Trimble, he's still trying to work his way into the starting lineup, but I think that's one area where Hubert Davis needs to have more success, being not only able to recruit these 5-star guys, but also get them to go out there on the floor and end up developing into great players in the future. But I think Ian Jackson and Drake Powell, the 2 5-stars they're bringing in, they're very talented guys. At least one of those players is going to have a lot of success next season. It could be Ian Jackson. Maybe he ends up going right into that starting lineup next to Elliot Cadeau, who's also coming back for North Carolina, and RJ Davis, which is going to make a dangerous backcourt. And then maybe you have Seth Trimble as a 6th man off the bench. North Carolina's backcourt's looking dangerous. Drake Powell, maybe he can play at the starting small forward position, but North Carolina also has Cade Tyson at the small forward position as well. I talked about him when he transferred from Belmont. He's a great addition for the Tar Heels, could shoot the basketball, and like the Tennessee Volunteers might get him, but North Carolina was able to win out in that battle. That's a huge addition for North Carolina. So they're going to have 2 really good players at the small forward position. And even though they do have a 3-star center in James Brown, it's also going to factor into the front court along with Jalen Washington, Ven-Allen Lubin now, and Jalen Withers. That's still the only area that could use another player. North Carolina's roster is looking very dangerous for next season. I think Hubert Davis has done a fantastic job. This is a bona fide top 10 team and possibly the best team in the ACC next season if North Carolina's more experienced team can beat out the Duke Blue Devils' more youthful team. Duke's got a really talented team for next season, but they've lost a lot of experience from last season's roster, so it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. But I think North Carolina did a really good job landing Ven-Allen Lubin in the transfer portal. He might not be a familiar name for most people since he played at Vanderbilt, but I think he will be next season. He's going to be a guy that averages over 10 points per game next season for North Carolina. I think he's going to continue to improve at certain areas of his game. And even though he's a bit undersized, which still makes me believe North Carolina could possibly bring in another front court player, I think that their roster is looking much better now with this addition, especially in the front court, than prior to this addition. And with that loaded backcourt for the Tar Heels as well, I think that UNC will end up being one of the best teams in college basketball next season that will be in the race to possibly compete for a national title. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below about North Carolina adding an underrated player in Ven-Allen Lubin, the transfer portal forward from Vanderbilt, and whether you believe that he is a good fit for the Tar Heels, and if you believe that North Carolina's roster should be done, or if you think they do need to add possibly another front court player to next year's team. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I'll see you next time.